For 75 years, NASCAR's been putting on races throughout the United States for millions of fans to watch on a weekly basis. Throughout that time, people have always asked the question, what makes this Southern Series so damn popular? Sure, there are 36 or more cars blistering around the racetrack going over 180 miles per hour, but that can only go so far. I mean, you can see faster cars in the IndyCar series or Formula 1. Hell, you can see even a higher car count at some local dirt events. So what's making it one of the most watched motorsports in the US? See, there has to be something that attracts the fans to the racetrack. However, once a person attends a race or even meets a fan, the answer is usually staring at them in the face. What makes the sport so popular is actually the drivers behind the wheel. The personalities, the style of racing, and their background are what attracts the fans into finding their favorite driver. Now, when most people think of NASCAR, they think of a driver that is usually a good old boy from the South that races everyone with ease and stays on the good side with the sport and the fans. Well, in today's episode, we are going to talk about the exact opposite side of that. Instead of the lawful good driver that most people see in the sport, we are going to look at the exact opposite, chaotic evil. Which begs the question, what makes someone a true chaotic evil driver? Well, according to D&D alignment chart, the same chart that Slapshoes used in his 9 types of winner video, a chaotic evil character tends to have no respect for the rules, other people's lives, or anything but their own desires, which are typically selfish and cruel. They set a high value on personal freedom, but do not have much regard for the lives or freedom of other people. Now, why don't we change the words lives and freedom with cars and teams, and boom, we have a chaotic evil driver. Now, most people would say that some of the most chaotic evil drivers could be stars like Dale Earnhardt, maybe even Bubba Wallace, or even Kurt Busch in the early 2000s. While all have a good argument to be in this category, they don't seem to fit the exact mold. In my eyes, there's only one driver that fits this category the best. Some may not know who he is, but when this is all said and done, you will never forget him. Let's look at one of my favorite drivers of all time who entered the sport and caused chaos wherever he went. Let me introduce you to Robby Gordon.
Robby Gordon is worried about a lap car, and he lets Tony Stewart get Robby. Hey, what are they doing here? Gets in the back.
Couldn't see that coming, could you?
Every form of racing he's ever been in, it's always somebody else's fault.
Now, most people remember Robby Gordon near the end of his career, a driver who was causing controversy everywhere he went and hardly finishing up front. But the LA-born driver was much more than that and had a major act for racing. See, Robby Gordon was another one of those drivers who grew up in a racing family. His father, Bob Gordon, was well known in the off-road racing scene and was nicknamed Baja Bob. Robby Gordon started his career in the same field as his father and won multiple championships in the SCORE International Series. What made it even more impressive is that he would win his first championship in 1986 when he was only 17 years old. His next 4 championships would come from 87 to 1990, meaning he won 5 championships in a row and would be able to collect 2 more in 96 and 2009, adding up to 7. To say he was a master in the off-road scene was a complete understatement. Robby's skill was being followed by many, which led him to getting opportunities to run in the sports car series, kart series, and of course, NASCAR. Throughout the 90s, Gordon would run a handful of races in NASCAR's top division, the Winston Cup Series, while focusing on running full-time in the kart series, the predecessor to the IndyCar series we see today. His most noticeable starts would come from some of the most chaotic moments in the NASCAR during the 90s. In 1993, Robby Gordon would run the 28 machine for Robert Yates Racing after Davey Allison would lose his life in a helicopter accident. 3 years later, he would start a few races for a brand new team trying to make it into the Cup Series, Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. He would then get an opportunity to run the majority of the season with Team Sapco, a predecessor to Chip Ganassi Racing, in 1997, thus ending his full-time run in the kart series and focusing on NASCAR. However, Gordon's finishes were lackluster at best in the 97 season, which prompted him to return back to the kart series for 2 more seasons. After an abysmal 99 season running his own team in the open wheel series, Gordon decided to return to NASCAR one more time. Now, up to this point, I have neglected to state why Robby Gordon was one of the most chaotic drivers to ever reach the sport of NASCAR. Sure, I may have said that he was involved in a lot of controversies, but I've never really explained further than that up to this point. He had speed, the determination, and the experience to run near the front of any race that he attended. So what was holding him back? Well, it was simple. It was the one quality that he possessed that made him come to the series and face the very best in the business: ruthless aggression. One thing that many people noticed from the very get-go was that Robby Gordon was a tough and overly aggressive racer. This was often seen during his time in the open wheel scene. However, thanks to stock cars being more durable, he would be able to take it to the next level. He would begin the 2000 season with a scuffle with a future Hall of Famer, Tony Stewart. The two would make contact during a practice session for the Daytona 500. Both would be upset with the incident. However, once contact was made between the drivers, Robby Gordon would show the future champion that he was not someone who would be pushed around.
I guess he got a little heated, he pushed me, so then I grabbed him, so you know how it goes from there.
In the middle of the 2001 season, Robby Gordon would get an opportunity to race in the summer road course event at Sonoma. Back then, road courses weren't a huge attraction as they are today, so teams needed drivers that had a knack for making right turns while their primary drivers would take the week off. The number 7 team of Ultra Motorsports would hire Robby for the Sonoma race, as his only 2 top 10 finishes from the previous season would come from road courses. During the first half of the race, the only Gordon that was dominating was the current 3-time champion, Jeff Gordon, but as time went by, a new Gordon would start controlling the race. With only just a handful of laps to go, it looked like Robby Gordon was going to make the huge upset and collect his first ever win in the NASCAR Cup Series. But as we know, with the mind of a chaotic evil driver, chaos would soon take over the mind of Robby Gordon, as he felt that holding up a lap car would be more important than staying in front of Tony Stewart.
Robby Gordon has got to be just seething.
This is just what drives me crazy. Robby Gordon is worrying about a lap car, and he lets Tony Stewart take the lead.
This would inevitably cost him his first potential win in the Cup Series, and he would have to wait till the end of the season before he would get another shot. 5 months later, the final race of the season was being held at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. The reason for this was that the race was delayed due to the fact that the September 11 attacks happened only a few days prior before the scheduled race. This time, Robby Gordon is driving the Lowe's number 31 machine for Richard Childress Racing, the same organization that he blocked from not getting a lap back just a few months prior. In the closing laps, he is in different circumstances as he is chasing down the already champion of Jeff Gordon. Robby has already seen one race get away from him this season, and he does not want to have the same thing happen here. He still has a few laps left in the race to get around the 24 car. Nevertheless, he is not taking any chances and does something that only a handful of drivers would ever do.
Let's keep an eye on this.
Oh, Robby
Contact!
got into the back of Jeff Gordon.
Caution is out. Mike Wallace gets spun around.
And Jeff Gordon has damage to the right front fender. He's got damage to the car and lost about 3 or 4 spots.
Jeff Gordon dominated, but it's Robby Gordon who's going to score the victory. 5th first-time winner in Winston Cup competition this year.
Whether the move was dirty or not, it did not take away from the fact that Robby Gordon was finally able to be a winner in NASCAR's highest division, to the disarray of others. Richard Childress would be impressed by the driver's performance and would sign on Gordon to drive the number 31 car for the next few years. Gordon would finally have a full-time ride in the series and was going to make the most of it no matter what. Even if it meant getting under the nerves of the biggest drivers in the sport, Robby would not care who he ran into, what the circumstances were, or how the world would see him. If he felt like he was wronged, he would make sure that all would pay the price. During his time with Richard Childress Racing, Robby Gordon would score 3 victories, more than any other driver during that time at RCR. Gordon would not sign back with the team after 2004 after he decided to run his own team, Robby Gordon Motorsports. The move was bold on Robby Gordon's part, however it greatly affected his performance from there on forward. Starting up a new team is very costly, and when anything happened to Robby's team, it would come out of Robby Gordon's pocket. With that being said, this would not stop Robby Gordon's aggression towards other drivers, as his most memorable moment would come in the 2005 New Hampshire race. During one of the caution laps, Michael Waltrip and Robby Gordon would tangle on the back straightaway in what was seen by many as a bizarre situation. Robby Gordon, who was understandably upset, would attempt to clip Michael Waltrip's car, threaten that he would get his revenge, get out of his car to the surface of the track, throw his helmet at the 15 machine, and would call him a 4-letter expletive in his post-incident interview. This would inevitably cement him as the most chaotic driver in the NASCAR series. His opportunities and wins would come from the most controversial and chaotic situations. His driving ability was impressive, but at the same time reckless, and he really never cared about what anyone thought of him. So there is no second guessing that Robby is a chaotic driver. But what puts him in the category of evil? Well, as we mentioned earlier, running your own team is very expensive. Failure to finish near the front or keep your car clean from damage will inevitably bankrupt the team. If you want to survive in the sport, you're going to have to do whatever you can in order to outlast and beat the rest of the competition. Robby Gordon understood this and started to do whatever he could in order to make it with his own team.
Great night for you. We were looking at some debris possibility coming out of your car, roll bar padding, anything like that going on?
Not that I'm aware of.
It may have been something you ran over as well.
Might have been something I run over because I definitely didn't throw anything out the window, so I don't know.
Okay, we appreciate it. Top 10 run for you tonight, though.
Yeah, looked like it came out from the back of the car, actually.
If there was one thing that most people notice with Robby Gordon Motorsports, is that they always seem to be on the wrong side with NASCAR. Countless times, fans would hear that Robby Gordon would be involved in controversy, whether it was purposely starting a caution, running illegal parts on the race car, or even refusing to listen to NASCAR officials during the middle of a race. Robby simply didn't care. If he felt like he could get away with it, then he was going to roll the dice. It got so bad that by the time the 2010s rolled around, Robby Gordon had amassed an unthinkable $290,000 of fines to pay to NASCAR. This would cause the driver owner to become more desperate and hire questionable drivers to drive his equipment in order to scrap as much money as he could for the team. The worst incident of this came when Robby Gordon decided to hire the Rookie of the Year contender Kevin Conway to drive his number 7 machine. The move was questionable itself, as Kevin Conway only scored one top 20 at this point, and had a sponsor that had a hard time paying dues with the previous team they were with, Front Row Motorsports. However, Robby Gordon was willing to take the chance, as the sponsorship dollars were too good to pass up. Unfortunately, Conway's sponsorship would fall behind on payments once again, leading to an almost $700,000 lawsuit between Robby Gordon and the company. The whole ordeal would reach a violent conclusion only 7 months later, when Robby Gordon would be in an altercation with Kevin Conway at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, resulting in an indefinite probation on the driver owner. If there were any signs that things were coming to an end for Robby Gordon's run in the Cup Series, it was at this exact moment. The one thing about chaotic evil characters is that their plans are haphazard, and any group or organization they put together soon crumbles. Sadly, this would come true for Robby Gordon Motorsports. They would end the 2011 season as a start and park team, a controversial method of racing where teams start the race and immediately park their cars in order to receive race payouts without wearing out their equipment. 2012 started out the same, except Robby Gordon was failing to qualify for races, inevitably ending any opportunity for the team to continue on their NASCAR pursuit. Their final race would come at the 2012 race at Sonoma, where the team would qualify into the race, but park the car midway through, thus concluding Robby Gordon's run in the NASCAR Cup Series. Now, it did not end all doom and gloom for Robby Gordon, as he still continues to race to this day, as he owns his own series called the Stadium Super Truck Series, a motorsport that has risen in popularity throughout the 2010s and 2020s. Even though Robby Gordon still sometimes gets into some controversy from time to time, it looks like things are going good for him at this point. As of now, it doesn't look like Robby Gordon will ever make the return to NASCAR's highest division, but there is one thing about chaotic evil, and that is everything is unpredictable, and nothing is ever for certain in the future.